This is not the review I expected to make. A lot of it is happy opinions, and some others leave me dumbfounded. I don't know what happened, but rest assured I'll explain everything throughout this entire video. Hi, I'm Clef, and you're watching gametechtalk. These products have been sent for review. All opinions are my own, and they get to see the video at the same time as everybody else. Before we continue, this is the ALPS model, and this is the TMR model. The difference being the technology used behind the sticks. Everything else is exactly the same from both of these controllers. What you have in the box, the software usage, the features. This official review is a follow-up to a hands-on video that I have done focusing on the ALPS, but also focusing on the unboxing experience and everything surrounding this series of controller. I would recommend that you bookmark that video to watch next, as it will give you more context that I will not repeat, just to keep this a better viewing experience for the people who have seen both videos. But it also doesn't matter which one you watch first, they'll both provide valuable information throughout the entire line of product. Let's first talk about how it feels in the hands. And in my hands-on video, someone mentioned in the comments that it feels a lot like the Switch Pro controller, and I referred it to the 8-bit Do Ultimate lines of controllers. Probably makes more sense that I say Switch Pro controllers, because there's probably a lot more of you that will have a reference. And indeed, all three models feel pretty much the same in terms of ergonomics. We're talking about a more squarish controller, so to speak, more slim at the grips. And this is exactly the style that you have here. Out of the three products that I just mentioned, this is definitely the one that feels the best. The main reason being the grip. Some of you may be concerned because it could fade over time. It's not impossible, because this is not a plastic shape. This is a rubber style grip. For me personally, I think the grip provides a better holding, a better ergonomic and grip experience overall. And this is exactly what you have here, which by the way is exactly the same on the other model, minus the color. As far as the buttons go, we are definitely looking at a controller designed for performance, and it feels the part. Without a doubt, a positive aspect to it. And then of course, every buttons that you have on there feels awesome as well. By the way, all of them are mechanical, all the important buttons, that is. So the face buttons, the D-pad, shoulders, and triggers, as well as the extra paddles on top and the two paddles in the back. All of them are mechanical, and they do feel awesome. The only tactile buttons that you're gonna have on this controller are the function buttons. Now this button here will be to activate turbo on your controller. This is to remap your extra buttons. That will be used to record macros. So macros are a series of inputs that you can use, for example, to have a Hadouken being made at the touch of a button. That's what a macro is for. Here you can make some configuration adjustments on the fly using this button. And this is a function button, which will also be used to make some adjustments on the fly. Ultimately, if you buy this controller, this is something you want to get familiar with and learn the shortcuts that are going to be useful to you. They'll serve to not always have to rely on the software to make some quick adjustments on the fly. Useful buttons and keys to have on your controller. When it comes to software, I have the BIGBIG Won Rainbow 2 Pro review if you want a more in-depth explanation of the software. Seeing as I already did that on the other video, I'll keep it short and concise here. What you have in terms of software from BIGBIG Won is honestly phenomenal. It's extremely intuitive, very well designed. You have a lot of tweaking because these controllers are extremely tailored for gyro gaming, which we'll talk about. You have a section fully dedicated to that. You have a section fully dedicated to addressing your sticks. You can change your layout. You can also change your modes, which we'll talk about further in this video as well, and remap your paddles, and you can also save your profiles on the software. And there's also another software that you can use on your mobile. If you want to edit the controller on your iPhone or on your Android, you can do that as well. And one thing that is phenomenal compared to the very few controllers on the market that do this, you can map keyboard and mouse inputs to your controllers. Once you configure, for example, your keys to do keyboard buttons, and you take this controller and you plug it on your phone, it is going to work. So it is fully saved on board. It does not rely on being on a PC per se. You won't have enough buttons, obviously, but you could type on your phone using the inputs that you have changed using the software. You have other controllers, for example, the Tarantula Pro that I talked about recently, the FlyDG options that will let you map keyboard inputs but you will have to be connected on a PC, and in some cases to have the software opened for these features to work. These ones do not require for the software to be installed, for the software to be opened. You don't even have to be on the same device type. This is something that could be extremely useful to a lot of people. I was thinking about that the other day, and that could potentially become an editing tool. I don't know if I want to go there, but it could. And that's crazy to think that I could edit with a controller. One quick question that was asked to me on the hands-on is, does the gyro work on Steam input? Yes, it will, as long as you use a controller protocol that does support gyro natively. The Nintendo Switch controller does, right? Because Nintendo Switch does have gyro. So does the PlayStation 5 with the DualSense. So as long as you're on one of these two modes, you can have native controller gyro data into Steam input, which is different than using gyro to translate by the software, by the controller to your sticks, which we'll address during the video as well. But in both cases, they work. And considering the controller has a very high pulling rate with gyro, as well as the controller itself when used through the dongle or through wired, it is in fact a very appealing use case for these controllers. Let's get into the meat of this video and let's talk about ALPS versus TMR. I said at the beginning of the video that this is not the review that I expected to make. And on my hands-on, I pretty much only used the ALPS, but to let you know a little bit about my process, between when I filmed the hands-on and now that I'm filming the review, I spend a little bit of time, picking up a controller, working through it, seeing how it feels. Never too serious, but to kind of get accustomed to the product and see what I would expect. And if I would have gone off of that, press record and give you my inputs, I would have told you without a doubt to go ALPS. And it's not so much that the TMR version was not good. It was good, but I found the default manufacturer configuration of the sticks were a bit of a letdown considering the capabilities of TMR. I have great news, awesome news really. Clearly, they have made firmware updates and they have greatly improved the default curve of the TMR sticks. They feel much better now. Of course, as usual, I went through Aimlabs to test, which, by the way, I'm changing my methodology to now be more consistent. So please do not compare these scores to any previous scores for the simple fact that I'm using an optimal setup. It would be unfair to think that these numbers are a fair comparison to what I've done before when I was in a much more confined kind of setup and not ideal. I made a test run with ALPS and then I made a test run with TMR. ALPS came out on top. It was smooth, not by a lot, but it came out on top. And then I did everything that I should do to give you the latest and greatest information. I went ahead and made the updates of firmware for both controllers, did the calibration, and then I did 3 runs with the ALPS. My first run, I did over 30K. So I was like, awesome. Great. And then the second run, it kind of started feeling weird, as if my sticks were juking, were not having the expected behavior, what I had experienced for about a week till now. That was weird. I thought, you know what, maybe that's me, that's crazy. Went into a third round, the same behavior. I'm a little taken aback, but okay, whatever. I grabbed the TMR. And immediately I could tell the difference. The TMR felt a lot better than they did prior to any other times that I had used them before. I figured, you know what, the firmware did something good. Those sticks are on par with what I expect from TMR. Great calibration, everything is good. I did my first run, my second run, my third run. Overall, mainly because of the first run with the ALPS, my average was higher, so I thought, let me take this controller into my gyro runs. And that's when I realized, okay, something is definitely off. My gyro was drifting, and keep in mind, the gyro is translating its data to the stick. So I don't know if the root of the problem is the stick, but it doesn't make sense that it would be gyro since the stick also had a behavior. Now, is it the firmware that is causing this? I don't know. But there was clearly a drift to the left. No matter what I did, my gyro, and I would redo the same motion over and over, and every time consistently, I would get further to the left. And when doing the same thing to the right, that wouldn't happen. I was not able to have a successful, good run with gyro. I was always considerably under, which doesn't make sense to me because usually if I use gyro, I will do a higher score on the Aimlabs. Anyways, it was around the 26,000 every time I tried. I tried calibrating, I tried changing my settings, I tried everything. It just wouldn't give me a fine result. Clearly, there was something weird with my sticks. Now there's something with gyro. Let me do the tests on the TMR. The first test was better than any other attempts I had done with the gyro on the ALPS. And the second run gave me what is by far any controllers I've ever used, the highest score I've ever clocked on Aimlabs, which is 38,000. Now we are getting dangerously close by, I'd say about 12,000 to what I can do with a mouse on most days. Is gyro aiming good? You bet that it is. And is the 1000 hertz pulling rate paired with the up to 2000 hertz pulling rate and of course TMR sticks that are now properly configured awesome? Oh my God, is it a killer combo? It's completely amazing. But I can't help but feel that we're achieving that result because this controller is not behaving the way that it should. And that's where it grinds my gears. I spent a considerable amount of time before filming the review, before compiling my thoughts. I was ready to come in here and tell you go for the ALPS model, and I was ready to apologize because this is not what I said on my hands-on. And I know that they're watching. We're having conversations in the background, about things that are completely unrelated to my opinions, but I know they're watching. So BIGBIG Won, if you see this, I know that you're watching. What I don't understand is what happened here, because that is not at all what the experience was. But with that said, it is a review of the controllers, and I'll talk a little more about that in my conclusion, but for now, let's just stick to the other aspects. Now, in terms of modes, they both have the exact same amount of modes. You have the Xbox mode or the X input mode, which is going to give you the green RGB. You have the Nintendo Switch mode, which is going to give you the red RGB. And then the PlayStation mode, which is going to give you the blue RGB. In terms of performance, pulling rate was great and it was very consistent between both controllers. Ultimately, I focused on one to do all the tests. I didn't quite hit the 2000 hertz pulling rate and I was using a cable directly to my board to limit any discrepancies in the results. Overall, I was very happy to see that the high pulling rate mode was supported by both Xbox and PlayStation mode, both wired and dongled. The dongle does not work for the Nintendo Switch mode, wired does. And when looking at Bluetooth, the PlayStation mode did not seem to want to connect when using the Bluetooth. They do work on the Nintendo Switch, but the Xbox mode do not make these controllers work on Xbox. You would need a converter for that. And the PS mode does not make them work on PlayStations. You would also need a converter for that. When looking at the report rate, I would just not rely on Bluetooth at all if possible to be avoided. So let's talk about price. Now, the TMR version is listed at $79.99 US, whereas the ALPS is listed at $74.99. So they're charging you an extra $5 difference to have the latest technology in terms of sticks. Of course, TMR has a few benefits over ALPS. No risks of drift, higher precision. The advantage of TMR versus Hall effect is that the stick, when properly configured, feels a lot more like ALPS. Considering the consistencies that I've seen after the firmware update on the TMR sticks, I would tend to feel comfortable saying that they have properly configured those sticks to give you that experience that would be absolutely fair to expect. And so that leads me to the last question, and we kind of brushed on that already. Can I recommend? Absolutely, 100%. I don't believe that there is a controller capable of giving you a better gyro experience, and their software also gives you a lot of power and the way that you leverage the gyro and these controllers. And then in terms of the polling rate, you have an awesome solution. And then when looking at the TMR 6, it is a beautiful solution that you have. Even though this one is having some weird behavior, I would still recommend it because it is still a phenomenal controller. It icks me the wrong way because I've seen what it's capable of prior to making the firmware upgrade. And that's the part that tilts me a little bit. But even despite that, I still think it is an awesome controller. I also find that they both have very good D-pads, which again, I addressed in the hands-on. You have extremely feature-rich, extremely compatible, and I feel extremely comfortable saying that right now, when talking about using gyro to redirect the sensor data to your sticks, there are no better controllers on the market. BIGBIG Won probably spent an incredible amount of time really tailoring their software to give you the tightest option there is when it comes to gyro. And I feel comfortable saying that this feels better than if you rely on Steam input for your gyro. So that is it, guys. Let me know how you feel about this review. Let me know how you feel about these controllers. Will you be picking them up? If you have more questions that I haven't answered with this review, make sure to let me know in the comment box. Also, please consider doing all the YouTube stuff. You know what I'm talking about. As always, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.